What is up, y'all, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Scotty Holiday. I'm a queer creator and a huge Star Wars nerd, so if you're into either one of those things, please consider subscribing for more. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing Andor Episode 10, titled One Way Out. As I was sitting here typing out this script, my heart was still pounding from this episode, and I figured we were going to get the prison break, but holy shit. This episode was so much more than I even imagined it would be. This episode was also way more emotional than I expected, from Mon Mothma to Kino to Luthen. I was not prepared. I could talk about how amazing this episode was for hours, and I did with This is the Wayseekers podcast. Make sure to check out our episode talking everything Andor Episode 10 at the link in the cards and the description, or wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you follow and subscribe to This is the Wayseekers too. I'll put their links down in the description below. Before we get started with my review, please make sure to like this video and leave a comment letting me know what you thought of Andor Episode 10. I'm putting out weekly reviews for the Andor series, so make sure you're subscribed to my channel so you don't miss out. You can check out all of my Andor reviews at the link in the cards and the description as well. Now, let's dive into the waters of Narkina 5 and get into this review. The first thing I want to talk about is Mon Mothma's meeting with Davo Sculden. I've talked a lot about things mentioned in the series happening off screen, and I'm so happy we've actually got to see this meeting in the episode. Maybe I expected him to look a little more sinister, but Davo Sculden was not what I expected. As they begin, Davo says he's met Perrin many times, and all Mon says in return is, "I'm sure." Her distaste for Perrin is especially clear here, if not the most direct mention of it in the series so far. Davo mentions his appreciation for the Chandrilan marriage, saying the old ways have value, and Mon literally responds, "Good, we understand each other." But she's clearly not referring to their traditions, but the old ways of the Republic before the Empire. As they discuss, Davo makes many valid points against the Empire's banking regulations that align pretty close with Mon's, even making it a point to say these regulations were made without Senate consultation, but Mon cuts straight to the point, asking Davo the cost for his assistance. He surprisingly refuses payment, only asking for an introduction between his son and Mon's daughter. But after his earlier comments, we all know he really wants to betroth their children, which he'd most likely use against Mon for covering up her banking. Mon declines Davo's offer, as expected, and has Tay see him out, but she's clearly shaken to her core. Despite Lita being so horrible to her, Mon obviously cares about her, and I'm not sure if Perrin would hesitate with these same terms though. I'm also so glad we finally got to see that shot of Mon sitting on the couch, looking fierce as fuck from the trailer, but it's really sad now knowing the context to this scene. I'm curious to see what she's going to do going forward though, since the banking issue is still unresolved. Maybe she could get the loan from Bail Organa. How perfect would that be as a way to bring him into the series that also makes sense for the story? Let me know what you think she'll do down in the comments below. Staying on Coruscant, I also want to talk about Luthen's meeting with ISB Supervisor Lonni Young. He goes to meet Luthen to warn him about Dedra, the attack on Spellhouse, Ferrix, and Axis. During their meeting, Lonni says he wants out now that he's a father, knowing the danger this operation puts him in on a daily basis, but Luthen basically tells him no, admitting that he's trapped. Luthen also mentions the vow Lonni took, which is not the first time we've heard this from the rebels. Luthen explains they have to let the attack at Spellhouse continue as planned to keep the ISB unsuspecting, saying losing Krieger's people is a sacrifice they'll have to make, even stating that Lonnie's more important than all 50 of them. Lonni talks about his struggle living a double life, his sacrifice, and then asks the question to Luthen, "What do you sacrifice?" And I knew this was a loaded question, but Luthen's response was so perfect. He says he basically sacrifices normal emotions, kinship, and love. He gave up on any chance of inner peace, only sharing his dreams with ghosts, saying he set himself up on a path that he can't escape, all before even contemplating the cost of his actions to fight injustice. He explains having to stoop to the lows of his enemy, using their own tools to defeat them, and he even recognizes that the sacrifices he makes are for a future he'll never even get to see. To say Luthen sacrifices everything would be cliche, but after his speech in this episode, I really believe him. In the end, he tells Lonni, "I need all the heroes I can get," and I don't know how anyone could say no after that conversation. Luthen's playing a tough game and making many hard and even dishonorable decisions at times along the way, but I feel like I finally understand why he fights the way he does, and I think this monologue really humanized him a lot more for me. The same could all be said about Saw Gerrera as well. I don't necessarily agree with all their methods, but I understand them a lot more now. I also wanted to mention the brief visit to Ferrix in this episode too. It's implied that Marva's health has continued to decline, so the people looking after her have called a doctor to check in. Outside of her home, we see Cinta keeping an eye on things, and even more interesting, a man in a green hat across the street who also seems to be keeping an eye on her home. After watching the credits and doing a quick Google search, it turns out this character is Attendant Corv from Dedramiro's staff within the ISB, so it seems that both the Rebels and the Empire are keeping tabs on Marva. Speaking of the ISB, we do get a little update that the captured Rebel pilot and the ship they sabotaged last episode was found and reported on Kafrene, alerting Anto Krieger's group. Now, of course, I can't finish this review without talking about the prison break on Narkina 5. We pick back up with Cassian and Kino shortly after Ulaf's passing, and after the events on level 2, Cassian's realized there's no better time than now to make their move, especially since they'll be bringing a new man on the floor tomorrow. Kino, however, is still not convinced, saying this was a power move, but Cassian disagrees, saying power doesn't panic, which I loved. Once he puts things into perspective, Kino does that face, and we can really see him rationalizing the situation for what it really is. Once they arrive back in their cell block, Cassian reveals the truth of what happened on level 2 to the other prisoners. A lot of them question the situation, but before Cassian can elaborate, Kino speaks up, shouting, "No one is getting out." Not only do his words validate the situation for the other prisoners, but it also confirms that he's completely on board with the escape at this point. I got so tense between Kino's lines and the music here, I could already feel a pit growing in my stomach. Now the next morning, the moment the camera panned to Cassian awake in his bunk, I got so stressed. I'm sure he got absolutely no sleep. Kino starts the morning off rallying the other prisoners before the floor is even turned off, and I don't know about y'all, but I could definitely feel the anxiety in the room. Cassian, Kino, and the other prisoners go about their normal shift, waiting for the new man to arrive before they can even put their plan into action. Now, I don't know if I could make it through the shift knowing everything that's about to go down, and the show did an amazing job of showing all the tension in the air between the prisoners looking around at each other and glancing up to the guards moving about in the control room. At one point, Taga is literally repeating, "I'm dead," to himself as he's working, and I was just like, yep, that's me. But Kino is all in at this point, and I love how he kept repeating "one way out" throughout the episode. Cassian goes back into the panel in the bathroom and starts sawing at the pipe, just like we saw him do last episode, only this time, he pries it apart until water starts gushing out onto the floor. My heart was pounding, and as the new prisoners lowered onto the floor, water has started spilling out of the bathroom and into the workroom at this point. Zal and Ham pretend to get into a fight to distract the guards while Cassian jams the lift, and once the first guard is killed, all the prisoners in the unit start to attack, throwing basically anything they can get their hands on at the guards. They try to spark the floor, but unfortunately for them, the water gushing from the pipe fries the system completely, and it's really over at this point for the guards. The prisoners are able to take out the two remaining guards, climb up the lift, and escape out of the workroom. Unfortunately, out of our main characters from this arc, Zal gets killed during the fight, and I was really sad to see him go, but I think that's only because I think he's hot. Once everyone is out of the workroom, the prisoners of Cassian's unit arm themselves and move throughout the facility, taking out any remaining guards and opening the other doors and lifts so the other prisoners can escape as well. Throughout these scenes, we get some quintessential Star Wars shots, seeing our heroes running through hallways, taking out any enemies they cross paths with, and I loved every minute of it. Cassian and Kino eventually make it to the command center of the facility and have the guards shut down the power to the electrified floors completely. Once shut down, they force the guards into a corner, and Cassian even yells on program at them, which I thought was hilarious. Then, in one of the best parts of this episode, Kino gets on the intercom system to speak to all the other prisoners in the facility. I think my favorite line in his speech was, "I would rather die trying to take them down than giving them what they want." The whole speech was so moving, and with all the prisoners chanting "one way out" as they made their escape, I honestly think I would have started crying if I wasn't so tense from everything leading up to this moment. It definitely got me feeling emotional. I also loved the shot of the remaining guards cowering inside a locked room, clinging to their weapons on the floor, just waiting for everything to be over. Once they all make it to the facility entrance platform, Cassian tells Melshi, "Whatever happens now, we made it," and I really loved this moment for them. Cassian looks back to see Kino just standing there staring and backing up while all the other prisoners are jumping to the water below, and when he asks him what's wrong, Kino says he can't swim. Oh my god. My heart broke for Kino in this moment, and I was really hoping Cassian would just grab him and say, "Hold on," but he gets pushed off the platform before he could even process what Kino said. Kino literally did all of this to help all the other prisoners in the facility escape, knowing that in the end, he wouldn't make it. He was so selfless in this moment, and my heart literally broke for him. I'm hoping by some miracle he made it out alive, but I have a feeling this was the end of his story. Then in the last scene of the episode, we see Cassian and Melshi running across the beach, showing that despite the odds, they made it out. This episode really showed how much of a leader Cassian has become, and I really think his time with Kino and all the other prisoners in the facility changed him for the better. I'm really interested to see how this will shape him as a character in these last 2 episodes of Season 1 and going forward. The acting in this episode was phenomenal. Both Stellan Skarsgård and Andy Serkis gave truly moving performances in their own right, and though she didn't have as much screen time, Genevieve O'Reilly's performance as Mon Mothma added even more depth to her character on top of everything she's been giving up to this point. So what do you think will happen next in the series? I think we may actually get to see the attack on Spellhouse, but I really don't know what to expect. With only 2 episodes left, I'm really curious how they'll wrap things up or if they're gonna leave us on a cliffhanger. Only time will tell. I'm still holding out for a Palpatine cameo, so let's hope we get to see that before the end of the season as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or hit me up on Twitter so we can chat more about it together. Once again, please make sure to check out This is the Wayseekers podcast and our episode talking all about Andor Episode 10 at the link in the description or on the end screen of this video. I'm also putting out weekly reviews for each new episode of Andor as they air, so make sure you're subscribed to my channel so you don't miss out. You can catch up with my Andor Series playlist via the link in the description and on the end screen of this video as well. Please consider checking them out and leaving a like. I really appreciate all of your support. Make sure to like this video and consider subscribing to my channel for more Star Wars content. To keep up with my latest updates, make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ScottyHolidaySW. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.